Andrew Lowe, more like Andrew, I'm on a high. Oh, God, that's awful. We just chatted with Andrew Lowe from Coffee Supreme, and now we're in the coffee break where we can break that down, talk about a little bit of coffee news, and also, little sizzle, we didn't get to say our hot takes in the episode, so we might drop them right here. But more importantly, we have a new soundboard that does some weird stuff. And now we can change, oh, there you go, we're chirping cricket for whenever I say something stupid.
Awkward.
But more weirdly, can we change the voice here? Let's see what we have going on.
Oh, now I can sound like this.
Yeah. Oh, I'm back.
I can't give you that too much.
Yeah,
we'll
so,
figure out a way to do that.
Yeah, we'll find a way to work that in because that is just way too much fun.
I cannot wait.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to have a quick word from one of our sponsors, Apax Lab. Elevate your coffee experience with Apax Lab mineral concentrates. Apax Lab's precision-engineered formulas, including tonic, jam, and lilac, are designed to enhance the coffee's natural flavors. Not going to change it, it's just going to enhance it. It's going to bring out the vibrant acidity, the rich sweetness, or if you use lilac, it might bring out those delicate floral notes that you've been looking for. Trusted by world-class cafes and even barista champions, Apax Lab helps you unlock your coffee's full potential. Discover more at apaxlab.com. Wait, where was that again, Sonam?
The internet.
Oh, okay. Thought I was going to say the website. Thanks. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsors at Eco Barista. The reason I sound like this is because they got massages at our stand at Mice, and so I'm getting a massage while recording this message for you. They're the best sponsor of the pod that we could have had. They have the best eco products. This probably sounds really pornographic, but it's not. I'm just getting a massage. They have the best eco-friendly coffee products. They got coffee bags that you can design yourself. They got cups. They got iced coffee cups. They got everything you need. So make sure to support them because they support us. Head to ecobarista.com.au and get 15% off your first purchase when you sign up. Oh, mama, that's good. Now, before we dive into the Andrew Lowe of it all, I thought we'd dive into the coffee news of it all. Yeah, we don't have the coffee news button on the new board, so we've just got Liam singing it in the background. But the first bit of story, so we actually chatted about this a couple of weeks ago on the pod, but the debate has finally been settled around who invented the flat white, Australia or New Zealand. Tom Cashman saw a billboard at a New Zealand airport stating, "Home is where the flat white was invented." And he was like, hang on a minute, but wasn't that Sydney, not New Zealand? He then did a little deep dive into Wikipedia to find out the origins, and here's that clip now.
From Sydney, Australia, and when I landed in Wellington, New Zealand airport yesterday, I was very chuffed to see this sign. It says, "Home is where the flat white was really invented." And if you know anything about flat whites, you'll know that they were invented in Sydney. So I'm like, oh my God, they're doing personalised signs for every plane that lands. But then I went over to the sign and it's actually a permanent sign. It's not a digital sign. So then I'm like, oh my God, they think that they invented the flat white. And sure enough, if you go to the Wikipedia, it says, while the origin of the flat white is unclear, cafe owners in both Australia and New Zealand claim its invention. So I was curious about this and went down to the origins and history section of the Wikipedia article to look at both countries' claims. The Sydney claim is that there was a review of a Sydney cafe in 1983 that refers to a flat white specifically. There was another article in 1984 that talks about a flat white. But New Zealand has some claims as well. The first New Zealand claim is from Derek and Daryl. They say, they just recall this, there's no evidence, but they recall it. They recall learning the name flat white from a friend who had worked in cafes in Sydney. Okay? Then their next claim, the second New Zealand claim, originates from Wellington. Okay? On Willis Street in 1989. Just a quick reminder here that 1989 is after 1983. But we're not done. New Zealand has a third claim, this time from a book. Okay, Craig Miller, an author of a book, all right? So it's not just recalling this time, it's a book. The author claims to have prepared a drink known as a flat white in Auckland in the mid-80s using a recipe from Australia. What are we even talking about here? So this is just disinformation. Wellington International Airport has disinformation as soon as you walk in. So I started getting curious about who these people were. Who's sponsoring this disinformation? Contact. So I looked up Contact. Turns out they're an energy company that also does broadband. And you go to their about page, they say we're a New Zealand business. But I thought I'd look into that claim too, given we know this company can't be trusted. Contact Energy, turns out they're listed on the stock exchange here in New Zealand, which means there's a database of all their largest shareholders. Shareholders that include Vanguard, an American company, JP Morgan, an American multinational, iShares, Schwab, America, United States. So not only are these Contact Energy people lying about this being from New Zealand, they're also lying about this being from New Zealand. They're not even from New Zealand. I was like, is it even legal to have this level of disinformation at an airport? I went to the airport website to look at their policies. Turns out the Wellington airport is dedicated to the safety and security of their customers. And how would you define security? I don't know. Let's go look at New Zealand's own national security intelligence priorities, the fifth of which is a priority about preventing disinformation, particularly disinformation that is generated and amplified by a foreign actor. And New Zealand's national security priorities aren't just about New Zealand. They also have obligations to uphold those priorities to Australia under last year's joint statement on closer defence relations. Under this treaty, both parties agree they have a mutual commitment to support each other's security and to advance security of our region. And yet day by day, they allow a foreign-owned business to disseminate very harmful disinformation in an international airport on their soil. This is an act of war against Australia. I call upon our Defence Minister and the leader of our army to invade Wellington this minute and take down this sign with physical force. All that said, I do like the fact that the flat whites in Wellington seem quite strong.
Well, I mean, that's kind of settles it for me. Sounds like a pretty deep dive, heavily researched outcome there. And I think we might not bring up the idea of pavlova.
Let's not bring up the pavlova, but I don't need to hear anything else about the flat white. But as Andrew Lowe chatted about on the podcast, he's like, who cares who invented it? Yeah. We're all in this together. It's not us versus them. It's just us. Mm-hmm, and we're just serving a good quality product that is now being represented all around the world thanks to a little company called Starbucks.
Yeah. Yep. Flat white. Taken over.
In other coffee news, we chatted a bit about supermarket coffee with Andrew Lowe. Aldi, Australia's Lazio, was crowned Australia's best coffee in the Golden Bean Awards in the category of large chain coffee. Now, when you buy Lazio and you're making it at home, they have here, with an asterisk next to it, they have here, you can make a cup of coffee for around 18 cents a cup. Now, this is extremely cheap when you're looking at making a coffee, a lot cheaper than spending $6 when you're out at a supermarket.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so let's break this down for some of our international listeners. As far as I'm aware, Aldi, the big supermarket chain, European kind of founded, sources its local own brand coffee from different suppliers around the world. And so in Australia, they source from a company called Black Bag Coffee Roasters. And then they've entered this into the Golden Bean competition, which is essentially kind of a homegrown competition. I think it's in the US and some other locations around the world as well, and they do blind tasting of it. So we've got this tick of approval that blind tasting this coffee is really reaching up there in terms of that large chain category. It's pretty interesting, like what the implications for better quality coffee at very cheap price points means from the supermarket.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've done a blind taste test of some different supermarket coffees, and we also, from our blind taste test, did it with Jamie, friend of the show, and we put Aldi on top as well. But in saying that, we put it on top because there's no frills to it. There's nothing exciting. Mm-hmm. It just, compared to the other coffees that we, won't name and shame, it just didn't taste like burnt rubber or charcoal. Yeah. And you could actually mix it with milk and just be like, yep, that tastes like a flat white. I guess the argument between the kind of specialty roasters and the cafe scene is like, it's just another reason why you need to offer something special on that side, because what Aldi is offering is a good cup of coffee at home for a cheap price. They're not offering anything beyond that or any special experience in how you're experiencing that coffee.
Yeah, and obviously this award is about the taste in the cup, not necessarily about the demand, but we have seen huge demand increase for making coffee at home. And also we know that this coffee option is really popular here in Australia. Like there are a lot of people buying this, maybe some cafes buying this too, but we won't talk about that one too much. But I think, there's two things that jump out for me around the significance of this. One is, as you say, cafes need to kind of consider, okay, if this is becoming a more and more important option or an available option for good quality at really affordable prices for people at home, what are they going to do that's different? What adds on top of that? And I think there's a lot of opportunity, right? Hospitality and service is a really beautiful thing that adds layers and layers beyond just a bag of coffee. But we have to really work at creating that and kind of thinking about how we can create value there for consumers. And the other thing that I take away is like there is a big opportunity here for coffee roasters to provide good quality beans for supermarket purchase. Yes, this is at a particular price point, but it just shows people are increasingly going to the supermarkets to stock up, get their coffee, go home and try and make good quality coffees. So, maybe there's a good potential for different brands to tackle that space.
Well, it's an interesting one where you look at it because Golden Brown, which is, specifically made for kind of the home roasters, we at this stage...
Home brewers?
Yeah, sorry, home roasters, home brewers. No, they could roast it as well. We'll sell some green.
Double roast.
Home brewers. Our kind of approach was always that direct-to-consumer retail kind of thing where, not to say we wouldn't go in the supermarkets, but the idea of like, we can ship it directly to you the day after roast, and that kind of time in the being mailed is the degassing period almost. So you're always getting that fresh quality product. That's always been that kind of challenge with the supermarkets. How do they provide that, especially when you're spending – it's fine when you're spending $10 on a bag of coffee if it's a bit old and a bit stale and whatever. You're like, I paid $10 for this. But if you're going in a supermarket spending $60 on a kilo of coffee, there needs to be a certain level of quality, and it's just how do we get to a point where we offer that?
Yeah. I think there's this kind of really interesting space with like bean supply that's kind of splintering or layering in the options for consumers, right? Because historically, when you said supermarket coffee, it was really bad. It was like really old, pre-ground, very dark roast, maybe imported and sitting there for ages. But now you've got all these different layers of option there. And, people are wanting to go like, what coffee do I choose? And you can start to get a little bit better quality and a little bit cheaper. And it's no longer that straight, clean cut action.
Yeah, and I don't know if the mics were picking that up. We had a beautiful song in the background, just the doorbell going, which is a guest for the next pod. This is how hard we work for you people.
Delivery.
We just pod after pod after pod.
Guest delivery.
Now, can we just quickly chat? Let's talk about Andrew Lowe.
It was so good.
Thank you so much, Andrew Lowe, for coming on. And I love when people come in and just share so much knowledge and insight. Like, that's going to be so valuable for so many people. Personally, for me, one of the biggest things that I was looking at, and sometimes maybe his point of views can be seen as a bit bleak, or maybe people don't want to hear it, where he was talking about, he was quoted in an article about talking about how, there are too many cafes in Australia and they need to shut down, which, no one wants to be bringing down small business and all that kind of stuff. But if you really get down to the core of it, it's just kind of facts and numbers. Like, it's all based on figures. It's not just saying like, you need to shut down your doors. There's just too many cafes for the demand. And I found it really interesting how he talked about, we say the middle class is dying, in society, but the middle class of cafe is maybe dying. And you're going to be provided with two things, probably either extreme convenience, affordability, or great experience, great quality, something different. And there's not going to be something in the middle, not just this cafe where you go in, buy a flat white and leave. If that's all you're offering, then you're going to lose out, because why would you spend what he was saying, maybe coffee should be $7 in the next year?
As a sustainable price.
Yeah. Why would you do that when, we're starting to see automation like Eversys come in, or McDonald's? 1 in 4 coffees sold in Australia is from a McDonald's. If you can get it for much cheaper, why would you not do that if you're not getting anything more,
Yeah. I think that we kind of need to make sure that cafes aren't just tick boxes, right? They're not just kind of offering the standard 1, 2, 3 items and filling a gap, that you're actually thinking about how are we offering something different. So I'm not sure how I feel about that idea of like the middle class of cafes dying. I think it's more just that you have to show more personality, offer something different, kind of create some stand for something with the products, but also with that experience.
Yeah, and maybe in my eyes, that would make them not the middle class. That would make them an exceptional cafe.
Sure. Yeah, okay. All right, fine. We'll just agree to disagree. Look, I think there were so many points that Andrew brought up beyond kind of just that. His he's had just such an incredible career when you kind of think about it. He's led 2 major coffee brands in Australia. He kind of co-founded Automentum, as we said, which is kind of an online kind of platform for ordering through the whole hospitality industry, really kind of changed how technology and business worked in that space, as well as a whole range of different experiences. I think, the driving thing that hit home for me is his focus on hiring great people and on the quality of staff kind of coming through. And, Liam, I know you've worked in lots of different cafes, and when you're working alongside someone who's got the right vibe and the right attitude, teaching them how to make coffee or work in that environment, the skills, you can overcome that, right?
And I think that was my biggest takeaway, was like how navigating, crossing national borders and going across the world, it really comes back to who you hire the best, train them. And so the main thing with that was like, invest in the people you get, like, regardless of them being like a bit more expensive or whoever it is. Yeah, hire the best, train them, and then let them loose. Yeah. And that's such I think there's a lot of truth in that. And also, don't worry about the skills. Don't hire on skills, hire on values. Yeah. Because skills can be taught. I think I've definitely learned that is that no matter what cafe I went to, there was different machines, there's different processes, systems. That was always the consistent thing. The reason I got the job was mainly because I was flexible, and the fundamentals were the values. Yeah. Bringing that kind of service as well, double backing to what you were saying about it's not really about the product. It's more about the brand and about like the service and the other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've heard it a few times as well on this pod. It's just like, you're starting a cafe, just crack open the books. Make sure you're like doing those spreadsheets, because it seems wild, but it feels like too many people are out there just wheeling and dealing and just hoping for the best.
Yeah, and he kind of touched on it as well as the changing to that kind of financial context a little bit as well. We talked about free on loan equipment, which is not everywhere in the world and is a really strong kind of driver here historically in Australia, where a roaster would actually provide a cafe with free equipment on loan as long as they're part of the customer, as long as they're a coffee customer. But that whole model and the financial backing that made that viable is kind of changing.
Absolutely. And you're seeing it's like way harder for smaller roasters to kind of get into that space because, as Andrew mentioned, just like price of coffee is going up and machines cost way more and they're selling less coffee. So it's like none of that makes sense. As he said, back in the day, you could just be a tradie who was like, I like coffee. Yeah. I'm going to start a cafe and hire a manager and you could make money. You can't do that anymore.
There's a weird like quirk in the coffee industry that like wholesale businesses were lent on to provide kind of equipment to a cafe owner. Like what other
Who came up with this? He was saying no one else. It's not like whoever you buy your eggs off is giving you fridges in the back of your kitchen or buying you stoves.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like I can understand it because historically the roasteries have been resourced to kind of help and establish this. But, it really detracts, like as someone who's worked a lot in B2B and wholesale coffee supply, it definitely changes the conversation away from the coffee and the coffee, service around that. And it's kind of, I don't think it necessarily is a positive in many circumstances.
It was kind of interesting. I was expecting when he was talking about his move to Japan, maybe to be a bit more research into the culture or the whatever, but it sounded as kind of quite cool where he just had staff members that were like, we want to take this to Japan. They were like, yeah, let's do it. And they obviously did their due diligence and research and that kind of stuff. But the key takeaway was it was just to listen and be observant. Once they got there, they noticed that there were some changes. They noticed that the roast profile was different. They noticed they needed to do a few different things there. Not to say they couldn't have got it before, but, the palate over there is less inclined towards acidity in general. So we needed to start changing the profiles to better match that. One of the things I was blown away by, did he say that 80% of coffee in Japan is consumed at home? Which is a really large number. I don't know what the numbers are here, but that feels like quite high.
Yeah.
So I found it interesting that kind of the biggest takeaway was listen and make sure that you're watching what is happening, taking feedback and evolving as you do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think he kind of had some statement there that was along the lines of bring your brand and the history and the product that you're really proud of into that space, and then be ready to make like 10% kind of adjustments to that for the local context.
Yeah. because he was just saying it's like that's what's interesting is that if you are still true to yourself of what you're doing, it's like don't be what's everyone doing there and I'll do that. Just take your thing and go and do it well. And then, be a little bit adjustable on that 10%.
Yeah. Yeah, some great stuff. I also really loved the idea about that, the changing landscape in coffee kind of globally in terms of the pressures and the prices and the expansion and maybe over competition of kind of different environments, that space, there's friction in that change. There's some real challenges, but that in turn, the flip side is opportunities to relook at how we can talk about and showcase coffee in a way that's hopefully progressing things forward for everyone.
Absolutely. Now, should I wheel us into a little segment that we didn't have time to do in the main app? So we're bringing it to you in the coffee break. Time for a little extra hot take with 2 sugars, no music.
With 2 sugars.
There you go. You got the live performance of it there. Or you could just cut to me with a deep voice going,
Extra hot take with 2 sugars.
or maybe it needs to be the high pitch
terrifying.
one.
Okay.
Extra hot take with 2 sugars.
Nice.
All right. So we've kind
Hit
of,
us.
with mine, we've kind of preambled a little bit, but supermarkets can't sell specialty coffee and let it sit on the shelf for a year and expect people to pay $60 a kilo. There needs to be a drastic change with how coffee is sold there. When you're buying cheaper coffee, you kind of, sure, it can sit there a little bit longer. You're not as worried because you're not paying much. But if you're paying a high price, you expect a certain level of quality. Now, supermarkets could get away with this because coffee doesn't technically in that period go stale or bad or make you sick, but it does lose a lot of its flavors and characteristics that make it unique. So I think supermarkets need to overhaul their stocking process, and there needs to be a way to make sure that you're selling fresher coffee to the consumers. Even up to 2 months on the shelf would be fine. We spoke with Coffee Supreme and they were taking measures into their own hand by most roasters put a best before date on their coffee, which is probably a year after roasting. They were putting their roast date still on the bag so people knew when it was roasted, and they were delivering it straight from their roastery to the supermarkets to ensure that it could be as fresh as possible. Now, obviously, we have to take there are some limitations because of this, but we can still put some things into work to make sure it's as fresh as possible,
Yeah, definitely. I agree. There's a lot of opportunity for growth in that space. And supermarkets hopefully are seeing that shift where people want different things out of that product offering. It's not just a tick box either.
Yeah.
Stand by it. I've said it before on the pod. There should be a roast date and then multiple dates where what to expect the coffee flavor profile to change.
Nice.
As so whether it's like a midway and then when it's done, it's going to taste dusty and decrepit and
Tasting notes, dusty and decrepit.
dusty and decrepit.
But I think, Aldi is an interesting one because they've built such a strong fan base around their coffee. I think the coffee in their stores is actually often pretty fresh because they turn it over so quick because people know to expect that. When people know to expect old coffee that's been on the shelf for a year, they're not going to buy it. So then it sits on the shelf for even longer. So you need to kind of build that ritual into the customer's experience.
Yeah, it's a bit of the chicken or the egg thing is that we don't normally expect there to be fresh coffee on there. So the people who value that, aren't buying it from supermarkets. And so then they don't bother stocking it and it kind of keeps on going. So got to shift that so you can buy fresh coffee there and then fulfill that order.
Now, Ben, you're one of the most controversial people I've ever met. You're always saying
I try to bring the sizzle. Just the
crazy
sizzle.
stuff. So I'd love to hear a hot take from you if you got one.
All right, my hot take. Fancy fit outs and cool brand design do not trump good service and delicious coffee. I don't know if that's really that controversial, but what I'm kind of saying here is that maybe differentiation in a competing market isn't that far away, right? And the point here is that, there's been a shift in some places away from just like having good hospitality and actually a tasty cup of coffee, and people have been putting the priorities in other places. So,
I don't know if there's been a shift, especially here in terms of like wages, price increases, all those kind of things. But I would say my general hospitality experience has gone downhill. And not from a quality of like what's being made, but more so just how I feel like
being treated.
How I'm treated. And more I'm like, everywhere's making really great stuff. It tastes a lot better when I'm treated well. You know?
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference, because I would still say, I think your point about it not trumping is right, because obviously vibe, you know, the music, the ambience, the lighting, like all those things are crazy. But if I have all of those things, you know what? It actually probably makes me more annoyed when the service is bad and I'm in somewhere that's super cool. If I was in a dingy place and the service is bad, like, oh, well, you know, there's this. But yeah, I definitely think that the service is is the most important thing.
Yeah. Don't take your eye off the game, you know, is that we are in hospitality and we are anchoring this around great coffee. So make sure those things are really hitting the mark, and then kind of polish the silverware.
Absolutely. I mean, what a great episode. We've had some really amazing guests. Do we know who's next on the lineup for our next episode?
Yes,
Can we give a little sizzle? Who we got?
We got Jets.
Oh, we got Jets.
LM. Yeah.
Jets from La Marzocco, Australia, or I guess you could say global. She works with the whole team, but based in Australia. Jets, what an insight. She's, I mean, such a big part of Australian coffee culture. She's been working around the traps from, what is it, like Proud Marys to Old Press, now La Marzocco. So she's done and seen it all. So she'll be an amazing chat as we get her on the following week. As always, we're trying to put together a really great show for you guys. And we know that, you know, I think it's something like, 30% of something of the people that are listening to this regularly are subscribed. So if you're sitting on your thing on Spotify right now or Apple, please hit that subscribe button. All of these things really help us. We're committed to putting together an amazing podcast and bringing the best people from around the world in coffee here for you, and providing amazing value to help us grow the future of coffee together.
Yeah, let us know what you want to hear about. If you got any ideas, any thoughts, any opinions, drop them in.
Now, Ben, you're within your first few months here at the pod. Can you hit us with the email? Where do they have to reach out to us? Does he know it?
Is it hello@itsjustcoffee.com?
hello@itsjustcoffeepod.com. And then hit us on the socials. It's just coffee.podcast. We'd love to hear from you from all of those. You know, DM Liam directly and just, you know, tell him all your wildest fantasies and to do with, wait,
coffee.
Coffee
Fantasies.
Yes, with coffee. Sounded too wrong in there. And that's a great note to end the podcast on. See ya.